This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of Phatts TV, sanctioned by PA Phatts and the non-genetically proven son. Any and all words have been authorized during the show. There is nothing off limits. Nobody is restricted from watching and participating in the show. It is a free-for-all. Commencing at the siren, any and all discussions will be legal for an extended period of time. Sports, politics, and any and all controversial topics will be talked about. You have been warned. May God be with us all.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Phatts TV on this Friday night, September the 3rd. Welcome to Labor Day weekend. Open them if you got them. If you're out of work, hell, fuck, even if you're not out of work, open them if you got them. Joining me, as always, in the upper left-hand portion of the screen from his underground bunker deep in the heart of central Pennsylvania. Still a student at that college. He didn't get kicked out yet.
Let's go.
Let's go. The one, the only, non-genetically proven son. How's it going?
Relaxing.
So we couldn't do our show last night, as we talked about a couple shows back, that our schedule is going to be very fluid because he likes to goof around with his friends at band camp. Yeah.
Camp's been over for a couple weeks now, buddy.
Band camp.
I'm the vice president of the disc golf club. Hello.
Whoa. You're the hoe in Joe and the Hoe.
Yeah.
You're the hoe.
I can't go on Mondays because I got class at night. Thanks, school.
Did you get your start by going down on Mayor Willie Brown too?
No.
No? Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm positive.
Okay. All right. So, college football preview show. We're going to go over the top 5 conferences, of course. Maybe a couple other teams in there, like Notre Dame, because, they're going to be up there. And we got year two of the Phantastic Phive, where me and the non-genetically proven son go head-to-head each week. Last year, I'll be honest, I got my ass kicked.
Do you have the records?
No, I do not. So you could look them up. Have your statistician who's there look them up. She'll have to find it.
Statistician isn't even in this room.
Okay. Oh, she's still pooping.
I don't know what she's doing.
Okay. No, I don't even want to know what the records were. I think I was like 17 games under 500 or something like that.
Yeah,
and you were like 8 or 9 games over 500. Like you.
Yeah, I had a bad second half. I
did.
started off real.
You did. You kicked my ass. So this is my redemption tour. My redemption tour. I'm happy to say, from a betting standpoint, I'm 2-0 so far this year.
You picked 2 easier games.
Hey, I took 2 underdogs. Okay. And one of them won outright. I had Illinois last week over Nebraska, and I took Minnesota in the first half last night, catching 7.5. Well, how come you didn't bet it then, if it was predictable?
I didn't even watch the game. I don't research this stuff.
So if I stopped right now, I'd have a 100% season.
Congratulations.
Let's go.
I made like $20. Let's go.
Hey. Maybe I made a little more.
22.
I did make a little more, actually. I did make a little more. All right. So we're just going to go down the line. We're going to start with the most powerful conference in the land.
Sun Belt?
The one that, the Scranton State School for the Deaf is in. That's always my go-to school. No, we're going to start with the Southeastern Conference, because that's where the number 1 team in the... What?
Josh hit a 17 parlay last night. UCF scared him. till about 11:30 last night.
You scared me a little bit. A little bit. A little bit. Hello, Richie. So, well, congratulations for Josh. He messaged me right as the show was starting. Is like, I want to do a parlay tonight. Do you like any underdogs? I can't say I do. Tonight. Tomorrow. Watch the Phatts Phantastic Phive in a little while. I'll give you my 5 plays that you should probably stay away from. But anyway, let's start with the Southeastern Conference. Your number 1 team in the land. They were number 1 team when the season ended last year. Your Alabama Crimson Tide. Going down the line based on their odds to win, they're minus 140 to win. Then you got Georgia at 4-1. This is to win the conference. Georgia at 4-1. Texas A&M 12-1. Florida 18-1. LSU 30-1, Ole Miss 33-1, and all the rest are at least 50-1, all the way down to Vanderbilt. That is 2,000-1. They're like the Leicester of the SEC.
They were 5,000-1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Really?
Sorry. Sorry. So, what's Alabama going to do this year?
Are we going by division or conference here?
Well, do you think they're going to win their Western Division?
Yeah. I personally don't think they'll have much of a problem.
Okay.
Everyone's like, Texas A&M. Okay. They had a good season last year. But as me and you have discussed, that season's kind of pointless.
Yeah, you could basically throw everything out. Just look at Minnesota last night. They played really good. I mean, up until that turnover happened that was returned for a touchdown. I mean, Minnesota had 11 wins in 2019, and then they played, you can't look at anything from last season. Anything. I would just ignore it, personally.
I don't think Texas A&M will give Alabama too much of a scare in the West.
Actually,
I don't think.
Do you think Texas A&M is going to finish second in the West?
Either them or LSU.
Okay. All right.
I mean, Alabama does have to replace their quarterback, 2 wide receivers, and a running back.
Yes, they only got about 22% of last year's production returning.
But they have by far the best defense probably in the country.
Probably.
So I think that's what's going to help them cruise to an easy West title.
Okay.
And I think the East is probably easier. I think the Bulldogs, Georgia. I think they have, other than Florida. If they play Florida at home, it doesn't really matter.
They never play. They always play on a neutral site. They always play in Jacksonville.
Okay. I still don't think they'll have a problem winning the East.
Yeah, no, neither do I. I mean, this is chalk all the way. I actually think Texas A&M though could put a scare into Alabama this year. Unfortunately, I will be in Maryland the weekend that they play. We might have to talk to Danny Wiseman about moving that tournament.
Josh says so now more NFL prospects can fill the holes for Alabama.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, probably.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, looking at Alabama's projected lines, every game is double digits except for the Texas A&M game because they are traveling to College Station this year. That line is just a little over a touchdown. It's between 7 and 7.5. So, it's...
Do they play them early?
I just said, I'll be in Maryland.
Okay, so yeah. So that's the only way that they can get a scare is because Alabama hasn't gelled yet.
Yes, but it's game 6, so they'll be gelled by then.
They should be fine.
Yes. I mean, Alabama does travel to Florida this year. They do travel to Texas A&M, and they do travel to Auburn. So, they don't have the easiest of schedules as some other big-name teams do that we'll get to in a little while. I mean, their home schedule isn't that difficult. They have LSU at home. LSU isn't the LSU of the past, 2 years ago.
They'll have a comeback season. I think they'll challenge for second, to be honest, in that division.
Don't be surprised if LSU loses tomorrow to UCLA. You heard it here first. Not saying it's going to happen, but don't
Wrong
be...
sport.
Duh.
You're thinking of basketball.
No, I'm not. I am not. Don't be surprised if it happens. That's all I'm saying. That line is down to 1.5 as of this afternoon.
Go Tigers.
Yes. Which I will say, though, the lower it goes, the more I like LSU. Because I like being contrarian and going against the public. I love to fade the public.
The public is dumb.
Las Vegas wasn't built on the public's knowledge,
This is true.
But yes, Alabama will win the West. Georgia, unless they have some injuries, will win the East. They are an underdog in week 1 playing Clemson, although I like Georgia to win the game, personally. We'll see if it happens or not. Other than that, they will be favored in every game until they would play Alabama in the championship game if it comes to be. Their only hard road game, if it's even a hard road game, is at Auburn.
I don't think Auburn is Auburn. To be honest, no, we're going a little off here, but we're going to still talk about Auburn. They got to come to Penn State in a whiteout.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State wins that game by 2 touchdowns.
We'll see.
It's just Auburn isn't Auburn. I wish we were playing, to be honest, like LSU at home. I think that'd be even a cooler game. Somebody who's going to be good.
Okay.
And give the SEC a little bit of a taste of that.
Okay. I mean, the Penn State is around a touchdown favorite for that game as of this moment. I will say that. But yeah, Auburn's season win total right now is projected to be right around 7 wins. So yeah.
I would believe that.
Yeah. All right, so we both like Alabama and we both like Georgia. Who do you like winning the conference championship? Any clue going?
It's kind of a coin flip for me.
Okay.
It's hard to predict, obviously, right now. But I'm going to not be chalk. We're going to say Georgia going to the playoffs.
Okay. All right.
The problem is if Alabama loses to Georgia, it will not surprise me when Alabama is the 4 seed. And Georgia is 2. Will not surprise me one bit, especially if they lose by like a point or 2. Which, if they lose, it'll be by a close game.
You heard it right here. Second, ladies and gentlemen, Georgia will beat Alabama in the SEC title game. I can't say you heard it here first because he just stole my thunder. So you heard it here second. Georgia will win the SEC championship. They will either be, I'm going to say they're going to be undefeated and number 1 ranked when they beat Alabama.
They're going to lose to Clemson this week and then they're going to win out.
Okay. All right. So that's the SEC. Let's move on to everybody's favorite conference, the Big Ten.
The Big Ten.
The Big Ten. So I don't know how many of you got to watch the Ohio State-Minnesota game last night, but it was a good game. It was. Minnesota is going to be a good team this year. Yes, they lost by 14 at home to Ohio State, when Ohio State was starting a quarterback who never threw a pass before in college football. And they scored a lot of Ohio State. They had like 4 or 5 touchdown passes, and like they were all longer, but like they were short passes, and the wide receivers ran a lot, like broke some tackles or good blocking downfield. I will say Ohio State probably has the best wide receivers in the nation. They're good. They are good. I don't see Ohio State losing a game before the playoffs. I just don't see it happening. Looking at their road games. Here is their road games. So they play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They play 12 games. And they only have 4 more road games. Which are, well, Rutgers,
A tough one.
Indiana, and then their 2 crossover road games. Nebraska. Actually, that's their only crossover. That is. Nebraska. That's a tough crossover. And then they end the season at Michigan. Yeah. Their hardest game of the season is probably next week against Oregon. Which I'm going to hope against hope that Oregon can find a way to beat them.
I'm going to be on the contrary about that.
You're a contrarian?
I'm going to say their hardest game is away at Indiana.
See, I think Indiana isn't going to be as good as they were last year. Again, throw everything out last year.
It's hard to tell. So,
yeah.
I mean, Penn State could be playing really good, and all of a sudden they're only a 4-point favorite going into that game. Like, I don't know. Ask me in about 5 weeks.
I will, because 5 weeks they play each other.
Exactly.
I will. I'll ask you in 5 weeks. At least on the weekend I'm away, Ohio State plays Maryland, so, don't have to worry about that game. Of course, there's a couple other good games. Penn State plays Iowa that week.
Hopefully I'm in Iowa. If I'm not in Iowa, I'm going to be mad.
That fucker Danny Wiseman's scheduling a tournament over that weekend, I tell you.
I think
Christ.
the East is chalk. Ohio State first, Penn State second, Indiana third, and who the hell cares after that? They still suck.
No.
The West is a little more interesting.
A little. Right now, and I know the 2 teams you're going to refer to. Probably Wisconsin and Iowa. And my 3rd team is Minnesota. I don't think that's your 3rd team. You're probably thinking Northwestern. I think Northwestern lost too much.
I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win. I think they could be 2nd or 3rd, though.
Yeah. My problem with Northwestern,
they don't score.
They're only returning 8 starters. Off of, don't forget, NCAA granted everybody another year of eligibility.
Correct.
So everybody could come back if they chose. I don't like Northwestern this year. I think, don't be surprised if Minnesota, and we'll look at their schedule to see how they do, could fight for 2nd in that division. It would not shock me if Wisconsin does not win the West. It wouldn't shock me.
I don't have to win the West.
You have Iowa winning the West.
I have Iowa winning the West.
Or you have Nebraska winning the West.
Purdue.
Purdue. Hey, I like Purdue.
I have Iowa. Wisconsin does get Iowa at home.
Yes.
Wow. That's I think after the first 2 weeks, it's going to tell me everything I need to know about Iowa. They get Indiana this week at home, and then they get to travel to Iowa State.
That Iowa State game could be a war.
That if they could figure out how to win that game, they will win the Big Ten West.
Okay.
They have it. Wisconsin, I mean, they get Notre Dame. That'll be a good game. And that's about it.
That's right.
Penn State early to get Notre Dame in the 3rd week, and then other than that, they got Iowa, but everything else is pretty easy. They do have Minnesota last at Minnesota. So if you like Minnesota, that could be where possibly
Yes.
if Iowa falls off, that could be for the division.
Their road crossover game is Rutgers.
It's a tough one.
Who's going to be improved this year?
They improve every year. They usually get a few wins.
They will not finish last in the East.
They will not. I think they'll probably finish. They'll second to last.
I think Michigan State and Maryland will finish below them.
I think Maryland has a better offense. Their defense, Rutgers probably has a better defense. Maryland's defense is,
Okay. So, whoever comes out of the West, do they have a chance of beating Ohio State in the Big Ten title game?
No.
No. Agreed.
Ohio State would be a 2-touchdown favorite, I could think, against whoever.
Yes.
So, no, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
Ohio State will be, unfortunately, 1 or 3, in my opinion.
The only way I think they could get up to number 1 is if everybody else above them loses. Their schedule isn't strong enough for them to hop over teams.
That's why I said 3. I think they're more likely 3, even though they're undefeated. I think a 1-loss Georgia team is better than a 0-loss Ohio State team.
Got ya. All right, moving on. Oh, I said I'd look at Minnesota's schedule. So, Ohio State, Miami of Ohio, at Colorado. That'll be an interesting game. Bowling Green. Bowling Green's nobody. At Purdue, home against Nebraska, Wisconsin. Those could be 3 interesting games. I still think they finished 3rd in the West. Just my thinking. All right, ACC. Obviously, this goes through Clemson. They're minus 375 to win the division. Nobody else is in single digits. North Carolina 10-1, Miami 12-1. All the rest just watching because it drops to 50-1 after that. Jesus Christ. The Atlantic. Clemson, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisville, NC State, Florida State, Syracuse. Does any of them at all have a shot of beating Clemson?
On paper, no. Let me look. Who does Clemson play second? They play SC State. So. Or SC State.
Yes, and they're a projected 63-point favorite.
If they face, I don't know who the second best team in that division is. Maybe Florida State or Louisville. Oh, God, I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to see who their crossover games are. North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech. North Carolina, they don't play any of them. Pitt, Virginia, they play Georgia Tech. Oh, boy.
They have a very boring schedule after the first week.
Connecticut, Louisville, Florida State. Ugh.
Wow. They'll be a 50-point favorite.
I will say this. There's always one team, one game a year that gives Clemson fits.
That's why I said on paper, yes. Because there is always a game for some reason that Clemson is on upset alert at halftime.
Yes. Now, I don't think there will be one of these games if they lose to Georgia. Because they'll be on a mission because they know they couldn't lose another game and make the playoffs.
I'm not sure if they lose against Georgia. If they win out, they might not make the playoffs. Because I think there's a chance 2 SEC teams will make it.
There's a chance.
I think a 1-loss Alabama looks better if their loss is against Georgia versus the 1-loss Clemson, which is also against Georgia. So at that point, you got to look at.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at. Here's the projected lines for Clemson's opponents. other than the Georgia. 63.5, 32, 18, 27.
They might have one of the easier schedules in the whole nation.
Assuming they beat Georgia, the one team that could potentially trip them up would probably be at NC State. That would be the game I would be looking for.
If they beat Georgia, Clemson does not crack the top 2 still. They finish at 3 if they're undefeated. Assuming they win the ACC.
They're number 2 now, aren't they? Or are they number 3? Alabama's 1. Who's 2?
Oklahoma.
Oh, that's right. Oklahoma's 2. Clemson is 3. Ohio State's 4. Georgia's 5. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yeah, this is obviously a walk in the park, right? And this is what sucks about college football. I mean, the good teams have a monopoly on the good players. Like why do you even want to go to Clemson when you get to play that schedule? Like, where's the fun in that?
Beating on teams by 30 every week?
Seriously, where is the fun in that? There's no joy for any of those teams. You don't. The Coastal, North Carolina, Florida, Virginia Tech, Pitt, Virginia, Georgia Tech. Dude, God, this whole conference sucks. It really does. I mean, North Carolina could be decent this year. I was on them a lot higher like 3 weeks ago than I am now.
North Carolina is the team that got really good because of COVID. Because a lot of teams didn't play, and all of a sudden they were good.
Okay.
To me, North Carolina is a basketball school, and it always will be a basketball school. It's either going to probably be them or Miami that wins that conference, but they will lose inevitably by more than 20 to Clemson, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you got to figure Clemson would be a 3-touchdown favorite over whoever comes out. Like, is it even worth talking about this conference? Seriously.
No, it's not.
Seriously. I mean, this conference just sucks. This is bad. This is so bad. Oh, God. I can't even look at it.
What's the next one?
I seriously can't even look at it. Oh, God. The Pac-12. Pac-12. In the North, you got Oregon, Washington, California, Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State. In the South, USC, Utah, Arizona State, UCLA, Colorado, Arizona. Let me just be the first to say, at least this conference is going to be competitive. Out of all of the conferences, this is going to be the most competitive one. I would assume you would agree with that.
Yes, because no team is ever amazing out of this, except for a few years ago when Oregon was really good.
Yes.
And way back when USC was really good. But nowadays, yeah, any team can realistically beat anybody just about every given week.
Yes. Right now, Oregon is the favorite to win the conference, but they're plus 275. So they're not like minus 375 like Clemson was. They're plus 275, followed by USC at 4-1, Washington at 5-1, Arizona State 5.5-1, Utah 10-1, UCLA, who was 14-1, that's probably been cut at least down to 10-1 now if I were to look up live odds. And then the rest are 50-1 or more. So let's start in the North. Let's start with the conference favorites, the Oregon Ducks. So they actually have an interesting first 2 weeks. They start tomorrow at home against Fresno. Now, they're a decent-sized favorite, but Fresno's not a team. Like, I hope for Oregon they're not looking ahead to Ohio State, which is next week, because Fresno is not a bad team. They're in the top 25, I believe. Or very close to it, if they're not in it.
I have no idea about that.
I know. So let's look at Oregon's road game. So, next week they're at Ohio State. They got a road game at Stanford. They should win that. Then they have to, the rest of their road games are difficult. See, this is the way conferences should be. Their other 3 road games are at UCLA, at Washington, at Utah. If Oregon has an undefeated Pac-12 season, I will be impressed. That's a tough schedule. Their home games, Arizona, that's a walk in the park. Cal, they should win that easy. Colorado should be easy because it's home. Washington State could give any team fits. And Oregon State to end the year, that game is always closer than it's supposed to be. It's the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, for crying out loud. So it should be close. I don't think Oregon escapes undefeated in the Pac-12.
I don't think they win the Pac-12. I don't think they win the North, at least. Which is a Washington game. Washington at Colorado.
Okay.
Because as we know, Colorado you Fitz at home. So I think as long as Washington wins that game, because they also get Oregon at home, they get UCLA at home. They do get to go out early on 9/11 against Michigan. Should be able to win that relatively easily, you would think.
The look-ahead line, believe it or not, Michigan is a 1-point favorite for that game.
Interesting. Interesting. But you're saying that Washington is a 5-point favorite at home.
Yeah.
So I think Washington could be the better team between them and Oregon, but I think those away games at Colorado and when they face each other are going to decide, because Washington, I think, has a better home schedule and a better away schedule. They don't have to face the hard teams away. They get them at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to pull in their favor.
Just looking at the returning starters with the returning quarterback. Arizona State, 20 with the returning quarterback. Washington, 18 with the returning quarterback. UCLA, 20 with the returning quarterback. We don't really need to discuss the rest. This is going to be a fun conference to watch. I could see me trying to stay up for a lot of those late 10:30 games on the West Coast this year. This is going to be a very fun conference to watch. The good news for me on 10-9, Oregon is off. They have a bye. But the cocksuckers, Utah plays USC on 10-9.
And that's probably the best game in the South. When Utah plays USC.
Yeah, but you can't sleep on Arizona State and UCLA.
I know nothing about either of them. UCLA's still a basketball school, so we're going to just say they're a basketball school. Arizona State's a wrestling school.
I mean, if I had to leave one of those 4 teams out from winning the South, it would probably be Arizona State, because they got to go to UCLA, to Utah, to Washington. They do get USC and Washington State home. You know what? Whoever's in the South with 2 losses.
I'm not going to agree. I think USC has a very favorable schedule.
Well, looking at them, they're at Washington State. That could be a tough game. Anytime you go to Washington State, that could be a tough game. Home against Oregon State should be a win. At Colorado. Home against Utah. That'll be a war. Notre Dame, non-conference. Home against Arizona. They'll blow them out. At Arizona State, they could lose that game. Especially if Arizona State's fighting for their conference life by then. And then at Cal. And then they're home against UCLA. Then they end the season, interestingly enough, non-conference against BYU.
I think USC's life basically relies on the first 5 weeks. If they can get through Washington State, Colorado, and Utah unscathed, they're fine. If they lose one of those, then it's on.
Okay. All right. So, force prediction. Who's winning each division?
Washington is going to win the North, and I'll stick with USC in the South.
Washington in the North and USC in the South. I will take... I'll take Washington in the North as well. But I'm going to go Utah in the South. The Utes. Yeah, their only tough road game is they have to go into USC. So they could go into USC and win that game. They'll win the South.
And that's the last game where if USC wins, they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
After that, then their schedule isn't too bad.
And I'll take I'll take Utah to win in the conference finals.
And I'll take Washington.
Okay. All right. Last but not least, the Big 12.
What do you mean, well, not least? At least it's not the most chalky.
U 20-1, Oklahoma State 25-1, and the rest just watching at least 50-1. So, the biggest positive for Oklahoma is they get Iowa State at home.
That was pretty much where I was going there.
And as of this moment, looking at all of their look-ahead lines, they're favored by double digits in every game. Even the Iowa State game at this moment, at least.
I think Oklahoma's conference season relies on their last two games.
Oh, of course. I mean, let's just look at their win probability for all their games. 95, 100, 94, 94, 94, 81, 92, 99, 96, 92. So, until their last two games, Texas is the only game where they don't have at least a 90% chance of winning. At least a 92% chance of winning. That's a pretty easy schedule. Then it goes to 74% against Iowa State and 78% against Oklahoma State.
So, basically, as long as they get through Texas, it shouldn't be too hard. They are at Texas.
No, they are not. We go over this every year. That is a neutral site game.
All right, Texas is the home team.
They are the designated home team this year. And, of course, it's October the 9th.
It doesn't matter. Oklahoma will win that game.
Yes, that's always the noon game when they play each other. Usually on Fox.
Then as long as they beat Iowa State, they'll win. They have the conference done. Oklahoma State, I could see them pulling a loss. That's a great rivalry. I could see it. Could happen. I don't know if it is at Oklahoma State or is that neutral? So it's at Oklahoma State.
Yes.
So especially if they are undefeated, they have the conference wrapped up. They even could rest some players. They could. They probably won't, but they could, because I think they're actually going to be the number one team once we start the playoffs. Unfortunately. Because then they'll go and play how I predicted Alabama, and they'll get their ass kicked. Because they just don't have the defense.
I think we're not even going to know if they have the defense till the time that game comes.
Pretty much. It's just the Big 12 is notoriously known for just not really having that great of defense, and
yes,
it lives up every year.
It is interesting. In Game 3, they played Nebraska, and back in the day, Nebraska. It's a shame how far Nebraska has fallen. The worst thing Nebraska ever did was move to the Big 10. For them, because they've sucked ever since. They have. Is there any team that could challenge Iowa State for second? I mean, looking at their win percentage games, other than Oklahoma, they have Texas at home, and they're basically a double-digit favorite to win that game. So I think the top of this is very chalky.
I mean, Iowa State could lose to Iowa. They are at home,
Right?
but that's not a conference.
Right, that's not a conference
So it
game.
doesn't matter.
Right.
So no, it's probably going to be Oklahoma, Iowa State, Texas, or Oklahoma State. Either or.
I will say right now, I wish the Oklahoma Iowa State was an early season game. I think Iowa State would have a much better chance of beating them earlier in the season instead of late in the season. Ohio State does have 19 returning starters. Oklahoma only has 15, but they both have their quarterbacks back. Texas, new coach. Yes, it was Alabama's old offensive coordinator. So it's going to take them a year to gel, I think. I mean, that's why I think this is very chalky. Oklahoma, Iowa State. It's certainly possible, easily possible, that when they meet each other, they're undefeated. That's easily possible. Which would probably put Iowa State, could be as high as 4 by the time that game happens. Maybe even higher, depending upon what else happens. I mean, you got to think that Clemson, Georgia, whoever loses that game will fall out of the top 5. I mean, Georgia's 5 now.
If Georgia wins by a point, Clemson goes down to 5, Georgia goes to 3.
Okay.
Or 2. They could go to 2.
All right. So, who's your playoff teams?
Oklahoma 1. Who was 2? Georgia 2. Ohio State 3. Alabama 4.
If there's ever a year that we could use expanded playoffs, I think this is the year.
I want to still do the conference thing because the Big 12 is going to the Big 12. The Pac-12 is going to be the most exciting conference, but none of those teams have a chance to make the playoffs.
Right, because they're all going to beat up on each other.
They're all going to have a loss or 2.
Yes. Yes.
Where it would be cool to see Ohio State versus, let's just say, whoever comes out of the Big 12. Let's say it's Utah. They have 2 losses. That would be an interesting game, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So, let me write this down again. Who did you say?
Oklahoma 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Alabama 4. And that's solely based off of strength of schedule because Clemson will be 5.
Okay. So, my final 4. I'm putting Georgia 1. I'm going to put Oklahoma 2, Ohio State 3, no, Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Oklahoma 3, and Clemson 4. That's right, no Alabama in my ticket. Don't be surprised if Texas A&M beats Alabama. That's all I'm going to say.
You hear it here first. Alabama wins that game by more than 10.
They could easily win the game by more than 20.
Easily more than 10.
But I think if there's ever a year for Alabama to lose a conference game, it's going to be this year. Even though they're saying that the quarterback, I've read and I've heard that the quarterback they have now is better than the last 3, which are all playing in the pros.
To be honest, none of their quarterbacks that they've had were ridiculously good.
No.
The wide receivers were ridiculously good.
Yes. See, and that's the problem when you have a really good team that the quarterbacks aren't great in the NFL because your wide receivers are so wide open. You don't have to fit the ball into this little area because you got like this. It's kind of like bowling on a house shot compared to a challenge shot.
Pretty much.
I mean, if you think about it. So who's winning the national title?
Well, Alabama's going to beat Oklahoma. And Georgia's going to beat Ohio State. And we get a rematch. And Georgia's doing it again.
You're going to have Georgia beating Alabama twice in the same season?
Yeah.
You're nuts.
Georgia's doing it again.
You're nuts. You're nuts. Nuts. We always tend to pick the same teams to win. We always do, because I wanted to take Georgia myself, but the finals are going to be Georgia and Ohio State.
Ugh.
I know.
Who was your two?
Ohio State.
And 3 was Oklahoma. Yeah. Whoever gets Oklahoma gets the easy game, to be honest.
So actually, I have a rematch with Georgia Clemson. So that means I have Georgia beating Clemson twice.
That you do.
Because the only way Georgia's going to be number one is if they beat Clemson.
Right.
Oh, God, I don't want to pick Ohio State to win it all. My hatred for Ohio State, my hatred for their fans, my hatred for their coach, it just runs so deep. So I got to take Georgia because I can't take Ohio State.
I think the SEC's defense would prevail against it. Ohio State would arguably have a better offense. Very arguable. But I think Georgia has a much better defense.
Gaia.
Because I don't think Ohio State's defense has ever really won them a lot of close games. It's usually their offense.
Yes. Yes. All right. So before we get into the Phatts Phantastic Five, let's talk about some teams. And we'll touch on Penn State because you go to Penn State and we like Penn State and stuff. But is there any other teams you want to touch on first?
Like from outside?
Like the one team that we haven't mentioned that could disrupt this whole thing is Notre Dame.
This is true.
And we haven't even I mean, and Notre Dame has a pretty tough schedule this year. Let me get down
statistically on paper.
Yes. Let me get to them. And we'll talk about Notre Dame. At Florida State, home against Toledo, home against Purdue, neutral game against Wisconsin. Where was that game supposed to be at?
It is Soldier Field.
That's
so
right.
Chicago.
So it's in Chicago. So neutral game against Wisconsin. Then they got Cincinnati at home. That could be a tough game.
I think that's a hard game to look at as of right now.
Yes.
Just because Cincinnati's in a small conference, so
yes.
What's the returnees like? You would know that.
Then they're at Virginia Tech, home against USC and North Carolina, home against Navy, at Virginia, home against Georgia Tech, at Stanford. So their final 4 games are pretty easy. But that in the middle, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, with the exception of USC, the rest of those games could be decently exciting. Now, why I don't think Notre Dame is going to be in the top 4. Again, as I mentioned before, all the returning starters had the opportunity to come back. Out of the 22 that they had, only 9 decided to come back. Or still had eligibility to play. So they only have 9 returning starters, 3 on offense. The only way for them to make the playoffs is to go undefeated. If they have 1 loss, they're done.
I would agree, just because they're not playing the likes of like Alabama, Georgia, Clemson to prove that they can hang with them.
Yes. Yes. And even if they are undefeated, I don't think they would make the playoffs anyway with this schedule. I mean, yeah, they got some good games in there, but nothing that's going to go, oh my, I got to watch that game.
I think Cincinnati and Notre Dame could be like a wow, I should watch that game, assuming Cincinnati still looks as good as they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, nah. The Wisconsin game could be a good game. Could be a defensive game. Other than that, I watched the Penn State game.
Who are they playing on 10-9, by the way? Notre Dame?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. All right, that's fine. I might have to be carrying around my my pad to be watching college football that day, but I don't think that bowling center we're going to be in has good outside reception to pick up the internet, so.
Gotcha.
That's going to piss me off. Yeah, Notre Dame's not making the playoff. Even if they're undefeated, not making it. It's interesting they don't play Michigan this year. They play Michigan every year. They don't this year. So let's look at Cincinnati since you brought them up. And if you want, after that, we could look at UMass if you really want.
Oh, yeah, UMass?
Who's projected to win 1.9 games, and I think that's generous. Oh, they play at New Mexico State to end the season.
Nice.
They could be the two worst teams in college football. All right, Cincinnati returning 14 starters. Quarterback is coming back. They do have back-to-back tough games at Indiana, at Notre Dame.
I think that could be a little telling sign. Obviously, they won't make the playoffs, but they could finish about where they are right now.
Yes.
About 8.
They do have a bye though between those two games.
They'll probably be the team that makes the. Other than the Power 5 with that bowl.
Yeah, they're not making the playoffs.
No.
There's no chance. I mean, their schedule isn't just like they have Miami of Ohio projected line 28, Murray State projected line 46, at Indiana projected line +1, at Notre Dame projected line +5. Then they got Temple, Central Florida, Navy, Tulane, Tulsa, South Florida, SMU, East Carolina. Yeah, that's a schedule that's going to get you right into the playoffs.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think nothing else needs to be said.
The only other team that's in there, I mean, they're good, but is that Coastal Carolina? They played Buffalo week 3, so there's their loss. At Buffalo. Yeah.
You know what? Don't sleep on Liberty this year. They were good
Liberty?
last year. They only had one loss last year, if I remember correctly. And they're bringing
Carolina gets to play UMass.
Go UMass. You know what? So does Liberty. Liberty's bringing back 20 out of 21 starters. They are going to be favored in every one of their games except for Ole Miss. They do have a very interesting game coming off of a bye against Louisiana Lafayette. That'll be a very interesting game. All right, let's talk Penn State. And then we'll do the Phatts Phantastic Five, because I only wanted to do this for an hour, but of course we're almost at an hour now. We always go long. So, my biggest unknown with Penn State is third offensive coordinator in 3 years.
That it is.
And the offensive coordinator that they're bringing in likes to pass the ball.
And Penn State doesn't pass the ball.
Air raid offense. He was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State for a year.
And he went to Texas.
And then he went to Texas. And now he's going to Penn State. I mean, his teams are known for scoring points.
if you watched Texas like 2 years ago when that LSU game where that was a great game, air raid offense game.
I mean, Texas averaged 40-some points last year. When he was with Ohio State, they averaged in the 40s. So, I mean, his offense is predicated on scoring points. So, we'll see. Does Penn State change their offensive philosophy, or is James Franklin going to tap him down and not allow him to do what he likes to do naturally? I'm hoping it's the first.
I think in the best option they have is to just James Franklin does not do anything. Just let him do what he knows how to do because people don't expect it.
Yes. I mean, I don't think he's going to be quite as air raidy as he's been. Because let's face it, Penn State's got, about 36 great running backs on the team.
Yeah, but
their strength is their running backs.
What is the easiest way to beat Wisconsin?
To outscore them.
To pass the ball.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and say they have a better defensive line than our offensive line.
Yeah.
So I think getting the ball out quick is going to be key. Like 1-2 second passes, lots of short 3-4 yard passes I think will be a good way to win the game. Move the defense left and right. And no freaking pass options. Taking a shot every pass option.
I would like to see them line up under center, a couple times a game.
That would be awesome if they would line up under center. All right, so let's go over the rest of the schedule. We're at home at Ball State, home against Auburn, home against Villanova, home against Indiana, away at Iowa.
October the 9th.
October the 9th. Home against Illinois, at Ohio State, at Maryland, home against Michigan, home against Rutgers, at Michigan State. Don't sleep on Ball State. They won the MAC last year after I picked Buffalo to beat them. I bet it. Because Buffalo ran like 500 yards on everyone. Then they ran a whole like 90 on Ball State.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn, whiteout, not going to be much of a game in my personal opinion. We're up 10.5, and it'll basically about 17, maybe by the end of the game if we're lucky. Between 10 and 17 point victory. Villanova, I'll be on the sidelines for that whole game. That'll be somehow that'll be 7-3.
Oh hell! If you're going to be on the sidelines, you might get in for a play or two.
I might. No, that'll be the game we're down like 10-3 at halftime, and then come back and win like 49-17. Home against Indiana, that's a revenge game. I think we win that game by 7. At Iowa, I think this is either where, if we beat Wisconsin, this is where our first loss is. If we lose to Wisconsin, we beat Iowa.
Okay.
Home against Illinois, it should be relatively easy. At Ohio State, if we get a fortunate enough break to be undefeated going into that game, we will lose that game.
Are you telling me? Are you telling me if you have a loss, you're going to win that game?
No. If we have 2 losses, I think it's a better odds of winning than being undefeated. I think being
that actually makes sense.
Really, really confident, and we'd be less than a touchdown underdog. And it's one of those games we'll be up at like halftime. We'll play a really good first half, and then we'll give it right back, like we do every single time against Ohio State. At Maryland, that should be a relatively easy win. Home against Michigan, that should be a relatively easy win, you would think. That's also going to be at least a student section whiteout. Not sure what they're doing there. Home against Rutgers, that's a really hard game. We might lose that one. Nah, we'll win that game. At Michigan State, that's a walk in the park as well. So I project 2 or 3 losses. If we're lucky, 1. If we have, I wish our harder games were later so we had some time to gel, but all our hard games are in the first half of the season.
Except for that Ohio State game.
Screw Ohio State. That's an easy game.
All right, let's see here. So you see Penn State going at least where they play 12 games?
Nine and 3 or 10 and 2, I think, is a realistic record.
All right, let's see what their current over/under is for wins. So that could be a bet. I think 9 wins seems pretty easy for them personally.
I think their only games they could realistically lose are Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio State. So would they lose all of those? Probably not. They should at least win 1. So you'd think 10 and 2 should be very feasible.
Mm-hmm.
But Penn State, if you're a Penn State fan, we know how to screw up games. Let's just go in Michigan. We have 3 losses going into Michigan. That could be a lot closer game than we think. I just pulled out a team. It could be any of those teams, realistically.
Yes. Well, their over/under is at 9 right now, but you are giving a lot to take the under. You're giving $1.60 to $1 for the under. You're at +1.25 State to get 9 wins.
So the people betting are dumb. Obviously we have a little bit of a homer, but I think their schedule, other than specific games, isn't bad.
It's not. I think they get to 9 wins easy, and if they could beat either Wisconsin or Iowa, there's your 10th win.
And I think they have a realistic reason to beat either Wisconsin, Iowa, or Ohio State. Those are the 3 losses. So pick one. You should be able to win one of them.
Yeah, I might put a little money on them since it's plus, and just hope they could pick up a win and not screw up anything else along the way.
The game they could probably screw up the most is Indiana.
See, I don't think they're going to screw that game up because that's a revenge game off of. Remember, folks, they only lost to Indiana because the officials didn't change a blown call.
Yeah,
that the quarterback was down before the ball. The ball was down before it hit the pylon. If that game is in Penn State, that call gets reversed. There's no doubt in my mind. But yeah, they're gonna be. If they're going to crush Ball State, if they lose to Wisconsin, they're going to crush Ball State. If they don't lose to Wisconsin, if they don't lose to Wisconsin, it'll be closer, especially in the first half, because they'll be looking ahead to the Auburn game. They'll beat Auburn. I'm not worried.
If Penn State wins like a game-winning field goal, I will be putting money that very next minute on the first half on Ball State.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get a decent amount of points. You might get 10, 13 points in the first half.
You'll probably get 13, I would say. Yeah. They'll beat Auburn, they'll beat Villanova. I don't think they'll have any trouble with Indiana come the end of the game. I don't know if I would bet Penn State first half. Iowa, that's going to be very interesting. If Iowa has 2 losses already, I don't think it'll be as interesting.
I really hope I get to go to that game.
Because we already looked at the schedule for that week, and yes, there's a bunch of good games, but we think that's going to be the night game on ESPN.
That's when Iowa is amazing.
Yeah. With the exception of Ohio State. All right.
But Michigan will probably end up turning into a semi or even another whiteout or a stripe out, so it'll be just as loud.
All right. So
I think you pick teams based on logic and not research.
Sure.
Because, sure, Hawaii looked terrible, and they're playing a team that has played one game in 2 years. But that's a tough one to know they're going to win by 4 touchdowns. I don't know. Like, I think you pick some things that are out there, like based off of trends and less logic. Just kind of trends, yearly trends, and a little bit of like guessing in there as well.
Okay.
Because we don't like Hawaii. We know nothing about Hawaii. We know nothing about Portland State. Or okay, yeah, Arizona's bad. And BYU's only starting 5. So what the hell is that going to be like? That could be a score fest. It could be literally, like you said, nothing.
Well, usually when you don't have a lot of returning starters coming back on offense, you play a very conservative first half of the first game.
True.
Trends have shown that over the year.
Yeah, I know.
And
which is also... Go ahead.
I was going to say, just like the pros, the defensive side of the ball is always ahead of the offensive side of the ball in week 1.
All right. Which is... I'm still surprised you didn't pick Penn State. Yeah, okay, new offensive coordinator. Sure. That's going to be a challenge. But this year they got practice. Mm-hmm. And Wisconsin's coming off a year where they played 3 or 4 games?
6, I believe.
6. So they didn't play a full schedule. They played like half their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a chance that could hurt.
Yeah, sure. Sure, it could. My problem with Penn State is, besides the new coordinator, which is, again, his philosophy is completely different than what the normal Penn State philosophy is. I think eventually it's going to be a good thing. I'm not sure in game 1 it's going to be a good thing. Plus, I don't know the strength of Penn State's offensive line. If I had a senior dominated where they've been playing together for 2 or 3 years offensive line, I would love Penn State getting 5.5, even with the new offensive coordinator, because, as we said, they got 37 great running backs on that team.
This is true.
But the running backs are only as good as the people blocking for them. And I couldn't find anything to tell me how good their offensive line was going to be. I saw one statistic from Phil Steele, and he had Wisconsin's defensive line rated better than Penn State's offensive line.
And I said that too.
Yeah.
I think Wisconsin's defense is better than Penn State's defense, for sure. I mean,
if Penn State doesn't win the game, I don't think they're going to lose by 6 or more. I think it's a close game either way. So, like I said, in my top 10, that game was in my top 10. It just didn't make... There was just enough to have me pull it out. I mean, the other games that didn't make my list were the over in the LSU-UCLA game, Texas A&M, Western Michigan. Those were the games I left out. Western Michigan's playing Michigan.
Gotcha.
So, all right, that's our show for tonight. Please stay tuned for the schedule about how we're going to do next week. One day next week we will do our NFL playoffs and who's going to come out of the conferences and go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. And we will have some plays on over-under team totals. Over-under team totals. I have 3 of them that I like as of now.
I know one because I might bet it myself.
I think that's very generous, but you are laying some juice on it. The last I looked, you're laying $1.40 on it.
Okay.
So for those of you that don't know what that means, is if you want to win $100, you have to lay $140 to win. But yes, right now there's 2 teams that I like that are under their posted team total and 1 team that I like that's over their posted team total. So we'll talk about that sometime next week. Obviously, I want to do the show by Thursday because the NFL starts Thursday night. So we'll have to see. Wednesday or Thursday is where we're going to look to do it. So we'll see what your schedule is. I know what night is you have disc golf Thursday, right?
Yeah, but that's the night I'm looking to go down to Port Royal if I can.
Okay, so we're going to look for Wednesday night to do this. Are you, as of right now, are you free Wednesday night? Not knowing your schedule for your internship.
Should be.
Okay.
Should be.
All right. Okay, so right now we'll plan for Wednesday night
Gotcha.
at 7 o'clock. And of course, our other love, politics. Well, maybe we'll even do a Tuesday show on politics. We'll see. We'll see. About that puke stain in the White House.
After another protest.
Hopefully you go to another one.
I probably will.
I got into an argument with some guy.
I saw your comment.
Yeah. I'll guarantee you some of the people there were vaccinated.
Yeah, I wonder why. You know that. Actually, about half of us, or even 2/3 of us, were vaccinated.
Yes. It has nothing to do with whether you want to wear a mask or you want to get vaccinated. It's the fact that you're mandated to.
Right. That's all we're fighting.
Yes. Yes. I got a very quick comment. I saw somebody commented on my Twitter feed today about me saying, how I said, the vaccinations are not effective. And she says, well, how do you know? So I put the definition of a vaccine. This COVID vaccination is not a vaccination by the definition of a vaccination. A vaccination causes you to be immune to the disease. So this isn't a vaccination. This is like a flu shot. It's preventing you from getting it really bad.
Yeah.
That's what this is. This isn't a vaccine. And we'll talk about that on our next show, I'll guarantee you. All right, I'm going to watch some college football. You're going to make some chicken.
That I am.
Yep. In fact, I want to make some food tonight myself. All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, have a safe, happy, and healthy Labor Day weekend. Any last words?
I got nothing.
No? All right. Wave bye. See ya. Wee.